Hey y'all, I'm Dan Hamilton, Marine Corps veteran and host of the Next Gen Warrior Show. As always, the Next Gen Warrior Show is brought to you by Chairman George P. Bush and our dedicated staff at the Texas Veterans Land Board. Joining me today is Meas Williams. She spent 6.5 years as a Navy veteran. She is currently the president and the CEO of Grace After Fire. Meas, it's great to have you on the program today. How are you?
I'm doing good, Dan. Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Absolutely. So, one thing that we take so much pride in here on the Next Gen Warrior Show is making this program about and allowing our guests to talk about their personal professional journey after the military, as well as the programs and the resources that they provide for the veterans community. So I kind of wanted to start there with you. Tell us about your military service, why you joined the military, and then I'm excited to jump into your life after the service.
Sure, yeah. So it all started when I was 19. I went to Ohio University, my first year in college. Like most students my age at that time kind of already knows or maybe not know what they want to do. And so I was the one that did not know what I wanted to do in school. And so I academically failed out my first year of college. I didn't do well my first year, and I knew there was more for me. And so I decided to join the Navy. So I went to the recruiter office in Ohio, which there weren't many recruiting offices in the small town that I grew up in. And so the Navy was it for me. And so I went in there and signed up. But before I went and signed up with the Navy, I went to my mom and my dad, and I just thought, and I asked them, what do you think about me going to the service? Now, to my surprise, my father said I would do well. My mother said I probably wouldn't make it. So I ran to the recruiting office and signed up with the Navy. And I did what any obedient daughter would do. And, there. So I did that. I just ran to the recruiting office because I knew there was more for me. And this was it. I didn't know what to expect. But I ran to the recruiter's office. And so I joined when I was 19. And before I knew it, I was shipped off to boot camp to Great Lakes, Illinois. And after boot camp, I was shipped off to the USS Baton. That's where my duty station was. And I spent 3.5 years working on board the flight deck of that amphibious assault ship. And I tell you, I worked harder than I ever had in my young life. And so I quickly realized working on the flight deck was not my cup of tea, and I switched my job to public affairs. And so I ended my naval career at 6.5 years doing journalism with the Navy.
So let me go back to that original piece, that 19-year-old girl who's going back home to talk to her parents. Right. Did you have, was there a history of military service in your family? Was this totally out of left field? When you sat down and had the conversation with your parents, and even were you nervous in that moment of being like, oh, should I actually go do this? Or because it sounds like you almost had your mind made up to some degree once they sort of gave you the green light.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So my father did serve in the Army, but we didn't grow up talking about his service. I have 3 sisters. So my mother had 4 daughters, and I grew up in a house full of girls, right? And so my father never talked about his military service. But yes, I had my mind made up. I wasn't nervous at all when I went to go speak with them. I am a middle child, so I am very independent. I didn't go to my parents asking for their permission. I essentially went to them to let them know what I planned to do. Because it was very strong, heavy on me, if you will, to go and to join. So I wasn't nervous in that moment. I just had my mind made up that I knew there was more for me because I wasn't doing good in school. I was 19, very young, energetic. So I was excited for the next step. I just didn't know what that next step was until I joined the Navy.
Yeah, so I'm interested too in when we have these conversations about trajectory and kind of the bumps in the road that get you to where you are now. And I'm interested to know from, your time on the flight deck, if you chose that as your original military occupation versus going into public affairs, why did why you said that and I've been in this position, we go, man, why did I decide to do this? This is terrible. This is miserable. I don't want to be out here. I want to do something else. But tell us a little bit about that decision-making process and figuring out where, your skills would best serve the Navy and vice versa?
Sure. I didn't know. I didn't know where my skills would serve because I didn't know my skills, if you will, at the time. At 19, I was discovering or learning who I was as a young adult. I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. I really didn't. So I didn't know what I was getting into when I signed up as part of the aviation team or bosun's mate team uh, with the Navy. I didn't know what to expect on the flight deck. But when I got there and learned the job, I did it very well. But after spending 3 years in the Navy, I realized there's jobs in the Navy that do coincide with my skills. And so by this time, I was learning who I was as a young adult. And so journalism or writing has always been my cup of tea. And so it was just, it made most sense for me to be in public affairs or to become a journalist with the Navy.
Yeah, I think you hit on something there that is really crucial, especially for when you get out of the service, is realizing that sometimes you will find things that you don't want to do. And you may stumble or get frustrated with your first job out of the military, or if it's going back to school. But like you said, you reoriented yourself to find your path. And so I'm interested to know, did you, 3 years in, did you start to realize, okay, I need a plan for my life after the Navy? Or was it more so, hey, I kind of like what I'm doing, but I'm just going to do this in the Navy without a whole lot of foresight about what would come afterwards?
Yeah, yes, the latter. I had no plan. I had no plan after those 3 years or being a journalist in the Navy. I had no plan what would come after that. I honestly thought, Dan, that I would maybe retire in the military. I did think about retiring when I first went in, but sometimes we make a decision without knowing the full picture or seeing the full picture. So I was thinking I would retire because I went in when I was 19. I could retire when I was 39. I'm still pretty young at 39. So I just thought, oh, well, maybe that would be the plan. But once I was in, I didn't think about the retirement. I just thought about, okay, do I really want to do this the rest of my life? Is this really what I want to do? Does this really make me happy? At the same time, when I was in, September 11th happened, and we were the USS Baton was one of the first ships that responded to September 11th. And I was young, and on the flight deck and experiencing at the flight deck at the time, experiencing those things, not sure what was going on in the world and what would come next. So no, I didn't have a plan, a foresight of what would come after the military, but things were popping up in my mind as I go from working on the flight deck to becoming a Navy journalist and deciding, okay, do I want to stay in or do I not? Yeah.
So, we try to spend a majority of our time on Next Gen Warrior talking about, time after the military, what looks like when, we take our uniform off and put on the suit and the jacket. But I have to know what the flight deck was like immediately after 9/11. I have to know, can you put us on the flight deck? Can you put us in the bunkhouse? Can you put us in the chow hall? The tone, the tenor, the mood, and maybe the anxieties of what it felt like to be a part of history.
Yeah, sure. So a normal deployment for a naval vessel is 6 months. September 11th happened. We back up. It's a normal deployment is 6 months with hitting different ports, meaning going to Malta, going to Greece, getting off the flight deck, getting off the ship, exploring and touring and shopping. But during September 11th, none of those things happened. Everybody was in full gear, full alert, high alert, 7 months in the water, meaning in the middle of the ocean, not getting off the ship, not seeing ground, not going shopping, not buying your favorite food in those different countries, literally working 12-hour days on the flight deck, if you will, and not seeing land. So in order to make some kind of normalcy out of being away from home and being in the middle of this, the attack, responding to the attack on the United States, we had still beaches. For those who are not Navy sailors, you may not know what a still beach.
I don't. I'm interested though.
So a still picnic or still beach is where we pretend that we're on a beach on the flight deck of this naval vessel, and we're grilling out hot dogs and hamburgers.
Yeah.
And you have sodas and water and chips, and you're pretending
that you're having a barbecue.
Having a barbecue.
You're grilling out.
And, exactly. So you're pretending. And so to make it a little more normal, but so after the 6 hours of having this naval picnic on this flight deck, we quickly go back into reality that we are in the middle of war, right, if you will. And, the Marines are offloading bombs in the different places. And we're attacking, and so as the Marines are attacking on land, we're in full gear and full alert on the flight deck. And so it was not a normal deployment. It was very unusual because we're not at war every day and we're not at battle every day. And so it was really interesting, to say the least, to be on the water for 7 months and just be on alert all the time.
Yeah, so I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps, and I don't think I ever wanted to be on the ship because I think that just almost gives me a little bit of anxiety. And that's not seeing land, and but I can certainly sympathize and understand that desire to have that normalcy of doing the cookout and acting like you're on the beach, because right, it helps to relieve some of the tension, and it helps to relieve the monotony of the every single day, at times doing the same exact thing and feeling that anxiousness, that frustration that comes with the monotony and the tension and the anxiousness and the pressure that comes with those jobs. So let me take that mindset and then ask you, now you pair this deployment experience, combat experience, you take that, you get your service in public affairs, and after that you leave the service and you actually became the outreach coordinator at Grace After Fire. In what way did your job in public affairs prepare you to do outreach?
Sure. Can I back up a little bit and say this? When I exited out of the military in 2006, I was a stay-at-home mom for 1 whole year. I was pregnant with my second son. And that, I think, quickly prepared me to go into the workforce, because I realized that I am not stay-at-home mom material. After wearing that uniform for 6.5 years and taking off that uniform, I'm again rediscovering who I am. I stated the same thing as I was going into the military. I had to discover who I am. I think the same is true when you take off that uniform. You have to rediscover who you are. I believe when you go into the service, whether male or female, you're in the service, and then come out of the service, you become a different person. Whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, we become different people because we have learned gone through different challenges and experiences. So you become different. So I was no different. I was exactly that. I came out and I was a different person. I had to rediscover who I was. And so when I was a stay-at-home mom, and then I went to work for KinderCare Learning Centers actually for 5 years. That is where, Dan, I realized that I had become this different person. My heart had become hardened. I was very tough and hard, and my exterior was very hard, and I had to learn how to reconnect with people. So after 5 years of working with teachers and working with students, I then became the outreach coordinator for Grace After Fire. I was connected with Grace After Fire from a Texas Veteran Commission representative who connected me with Grace After Fire and said, "Hey, Mia, I have this perfect position that's open." He didn't know me from Adam and Eve. He just saw my resume. He said, "You would be perfect for this position." I said, "Okay, what is it?" Because at this time, Dan, I knew it was time for me to leave my position at KinderCare. You just have a sense. You can just kind of feel when things are done or ending in your life, whether it's a career or a relationship or whatever it may be. So I knew it was time for me to leave the KinderCare. And so the TVC, Texas Veteran Commission representative, said to me, "Hey, Mia, I have this perfect position." And I said, "Okay, what is it?" He said, "It's to be an outreach coordinator for Grace After Fire." And I said, "Well, what is a Grace After Fire?" And so he proceeded to tell me, hey, it's an organization that serves women veterans, helps women transition out of the military. They have different programs and different services. You would be perfect. And I said, okay, sign me up. And so I had 3 days after I met with Reginald Parker, who was the TVC representative at the time, connected me with Lil Seraphine, who was the program director at the time for Grace After Fire. I had an interview the very next day. 2 days later, I got hired as the outreach coordinator, serving women veterans in the community, connecting veterans with community resources and those types of things. And so I think to go back to your original question, Dan, the military, not only my job as a public affairs officer, if you will, or a petty officer, but the military prepared me for my job as an outreach coordinator simply because I donned the uniform. And I'm able to connect, and I was able to connect with those women veterans because I served. It's different. I can relate to that woman veteran. And so because I served in the military, I was able to connect in my job, but I learned different skills, organizational skills, and how to take initiative, and all those things really prepared me for my job as an outreach coordinator.
What did you see in the veterans community when you began as an outreach coordinator?
I saw women who didn't really identify as veterans. And I would say that the veteran community was very, very new to me. When I got out of the military, I had no idea that there were veteran service organizations. I had no idea Grace After Fire even existed, or organizations like Grace After Fire. So it was brand new to me. And so I stepped into this world that really spoke to my need. My need was I needed camaraderie. My need is that I still need a connection like I had in the military. My need was I needed to have like-minded people around me for support and system and structure. I needed that. Grace After Fire and the veteran community gave that to me. I didn't know I was looking for that until I dropped into the veteran community. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you didn't know or that you had not accessed the resources of veteran service organizations. And right. I think, myself and many other veterans, experience the same thing. You Sure. either take off the uniform and you run and hide from that identity and that experience, or, some guys or gals, live with that on their exterior and they stay very close to their military identity. But I think there's also a lot of those in armed forces who leave afterwards and are kind of unsure how to use their military experience, use their military skill set going forward, and how much of that should be a part of Mia or a part of Dan moving forward, right? And you experienced the same thing. So what have you done at Grace After Fire in order to reach out to those women to say, hey, we want to bring you into our community. We want to bring resources to you, and we want to make sure that you're successful after the military?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we do is we remind, or we reach out to women veterans, letting them know they're not alone. Mm-hmm. There's organizations out there that support you. We do that. We're able to reach out to women veterans through our peer-to-peer support programs, our financial assistance programs, and those different programs that speak to the unique need of women veterans and her family. We're also able to let women veterans know that they're not alone by our annual retreats and our different events throughout the year. Often, Dan, women or veterans, alike are looking for that connection. I said that earlier, because I think we're all looking for that camaraderie that was created when we had on the uniform. And so we give that to women veterans through our different services and programs and events throughout the year.
You mentioned the camaraderie piece, and that is an interesting conversation, I think, to have, because when I got out of the service, I guess I'm more of an introvert, right? I prefer more intimate conversations like this, where we're diving into a topic or an issue, or talking about a business or a nonprofit or whatever it may be. Being around lots of people on a flight deck or in the chow hall and stuff, for me, it became exhausting. But I did realize And I felt almost a sense of fear when I didn't have the closest Marines around me, when I no longer had my flak jacket on, I didn't have my rifle with me, and I didn't have armored trucks. I felt naked. I felt afraid. And because I was like, I don't have my group. So as much as like introvert Dan, wants to be maybe a little bit alone and a little bit quiet, that piece of camaraderie, I didn't realize how important that was to me. I found that through different avenues. I found that at Student Veteran Association. I found that in my workplace, in my church, place of worship, my relationship with my wife, So there's different ways to find that camaraderie after the service. But I'm interested to know from you and the women that you talk to about how you discuss that sense of camaraderie after the military.
Sure, yeah. Those conversations arise during our peer-to-peer groups or our one-on-one conversations. They naturally come out when you put women in a room. We like to talk, a lot. And so I think, those conversations come out just naturally when there is a sense of connection. Anytime a woman veteran or a male veteran says, I'm a veteran, they identify as a veteran, whether it's a Marine Corps veteran or a Navy veteran, there is instant connection. Like right now, Dan, you're my brother, right?
Yes,
you're my brother from another mother.
That's
but
right.
We were, right? We're brother and sister because we served. I believe the same thing happens in a room with women veterans. Those conversations just come out naturally when we're in a room together.
So talk to us about your growth within the organization. And one thing that I'm always interested in by the stories that we have here are the personal and professional growth of the veteran. And what do you think about Grace After Fire allowed you to succeed and grow in your professional life to where you could become the president and the CEO, to have the ability to mold and meld the organization in the way that you want to?
Sure. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to say the back end and then I'm going to go forward, but I will tell you that Grace After Fire has taught me how to be a leader. I can't say that I was necessarily a leader when I was in the Navy. I knew how to tell people what to do because of the chevrons that were on my collar. I didn't necessarily and did not know how to lead when I was in the service. And so Grace After Fire has taught me how to connect with other people and to lead, to become a real leader from my perspective. So when I came on board with Grace After Fire in 2012, I was the outreach coordinator, and I did that for a year and a half. And in that year and a half, as being the outreach coordinator, I learned, learned about myself, but I was connected to the community. And as you connect with other partners and other community partners and meet other veterans, I think something natural happens when you are open to learning. And I was open to learning who I was and who I was becoming, because I was becoming somebody different, somebody new. I was being introduced to myself, so to speak, as I was maneuvering and having this journey of discovery as an outreach coordinator. And then after a year and a half of learning the ins and outs of the organization, I then became the program director of Grace After Fire. And in that position, I learned even more about myself and how to sacrifice and just be a lead by example, And then after 8 months or 9 months of being the program director, I then became the president and CEO. And I've been the president and CEO for the last 7 or 6.5 years. I will tell you this, Dan, as I was maneuvering through those different positions, I cannot honestly sit here and say I knew what I was getting into, because I didn't. Even when I became the president and CEO, I was scared out my mind. But what I would say about that is, even when you're afraid, do it anyways. Because the very thing that scares your pants off, if you will, or scares your socks off, is the very thing where you're going to probably learn the most life-changing lessons in that moment. So for me, becoming the president and CEO, I had no idea what I was supposed to do or if I could even do it. But what I did do was I took the chance and I stepped into that role.
No, that's really incredible, because I think that's the one, the fear that the civilian life, that we experience in the civilian life, is that, the military provides you a clear route to promotions,
Yeah.
and it's the staircase, right? It says you do this, you do this physically, you do deployments, you get this billet, you advance. Civilian life is much different. Like you just talked about, sometimes you get put in roles where you go, oh man, I am really scared. There's no, that's just, I think we are rewarded for our hard work, our dedication, but it doesn't feel at times like there's that clear step ladder. But like you just said, if you continue to have faith in yourself, if you put good people around you,
Right.
then you can kind of steady yourself and find your rhythm and find your groove. Even when you might be afraid, there's still a healthy way to go about it.
Absolutely. I love what you said about the stepstones. There's a step ladder in the military because everything is structured for us. Everything is outlined. So you don't have to guess what you're going to wear for the day. You don't have to guess what the next promotion is going to be like. You don't have to guess because every single thing is outlined for you. But when you take off that uniform and you come into the civilian sector, there's not an outline, right? There's no outline. There's no rule book, if you will. And so to your point, yeah, sometimes it's a little scary. But when you have the right people around giving you that support, like we had in the military, because you have structure and support when you're in the military. So when you come out of that uniform, you're looking for the same structure and support. And sometimes it doesn't look like it looked before. Sometimes our structure and support is wrapped up in a different present with a different bow. We have to just be open to receiving that.
So one thing that you guys do is provide, and you touched on it briefly, you talked about the annual retreat, but you guys also provide, structure and support, if you will, financial assistance programs.
Yes.
I know you guys do a lot of great work with our sister agency, the Texas Veterans Commission. Can you just talk about the last year and the assistance that you all have been able to provide for veterans across Texas and around the country?
Sure. Yeah. So in the last year, we served 736 veterans. And we were able to, so we served 736 veterans, but we were able to, the one thing that we're super proud of is that we were able to provide 81 months of utility bills. We were able to provide 236 months of rent and mortgage assistance to those veterans. We were able to keep women veterans off the streets and into their homes. And that's one of the things that we are aiming to do is, decreasing that homeless rate, right? How can we assist our sister veterans? So through the funds from TVC, Texas Veteran Commission, we were able to do that. And more than we were able to, because of COVID-19, I think the whole world became a virtual platform, if you will. And so for our peer-to-peer support program in the last year, we moved our support program from a in-person connection to a virtual platform. And we hosted more than 85 of those groups throughout the year.
Yeah. That's really incredible. I mean, the thing that I value so much, and the reason I admire people like yourself, are the continuation to, or the ability to continue, and the desire to continue to serve your community. And you really, guys, you all are on the front lines of serving the military and the veterans community. If I can ask you, one more piece about that, can you tell us a little bit more about the annual retreat? And if somebody watching this in the audience wants to get involved, what is that all about, and how do we find out more about it?
Yeah. So I would tell you, Dan, the annual retreat is probably one of my favorite parts of one of our favorite events and one of the year. So the annual retreat is held in April, the second weekend in April. It's a 2.5-day retreat. It's all inclusive. So the board and room and activities are all included for the women veteran. It's held in a private ranch outside of Abilene. So 5 hours for that veteran who is driving from Houston, maybe 3.5 hours from that veteran who's driving from San Antonio. All veterans are welcome. You don't have to live in the state of Texas to join us. You can come from New York or Alaska, if you will, if you're interested in joining. But it's amazing. We bring 27 veterans in to this ranch. The activities range from archery to fishing to deer breeding tours. So we don't breed, let me pause here and say this. We don't breed the deer. We just go through the tour. They just walk through the tour on what that may look like if they were breeding. And then we do have our peer-to-peer groups, breakout sessions during that time. We have done these retreats. We're going in our 7th year of these retreats. And Dan, from my experience, 27 women veterans walk in those double doors at that ranch as strangers. And by the end of Sunday, the 3rd day or the 2.5 days of the retreat, we are now family and friends.
I love that.
Simply amazing. And so I welcome all veterans who are interested in doing that. In the beginning of April, there will be a link that's sent out on our Facebook page, as well as our website, linking that a link will connect them to the RSV page to sign up for that retreat.
So let me ask you, changing gears here a little bit, for somebody who's been leading the organization for over 6 years, I believe you said, you've seen probably a lot of growth. You've seen changes in the veterans community, different policies, different leadership, different tactics about how to serve the veterans community. How have you kept yourself going over the last couple of years? What are maybe some advice that you would share, even with your peers who are senior leaders, about how to either prevent burnout or also just to keep yourself going so that you can continue to serve your community and serve your organization?
Yeah, that's great. One thing that what we preach, if you will, to the veterans that we serve is self-care. And so to prevent burnout, I encourage my team as well as myself, I do this, is self-care. Meaning sometimes you have to just shut down the laptop, walk out of your home office or the physical office that you're in, and close it down for the day. I recommend yoga or reading a book or just having a bubble bath or whatever it may be. And those are the things I partake in because I realize that I cannot serve others fully if I don't take care of myself. And so if my fellow executive leader is listening, I would say, take time for yourself, because you cannot be your best self if you don't take care of yourself by closing it down for a day or two, so you can regroup and do what you do best. And so for me, I continue moving because I have that self-care, but I know that the mission is not over. I have a desire to keep serving. And so I keep going because there are women veterans still out there who need our support and who need what we do.
Absolutely. Well, this has been an incredible conversation, Mia. I appreciate you telling us about your military service. I mean, to be able to cover being on the flight deck after 9/11 to what you do currently to serve veterans and how you continue to make sure that you're in, fighting shape so that you can serve your community and to make sure that you're firing on all cylinders has really been great to walk through that with you. And you all provide so many great programs and resources for female veterans here in Texas and around the nation. But I just wanted to offer you one piece of or one last word or a piece of advice that you would like to leave our audience with today.
Yeah, I would say wherever you are, woman veteran, you are not alone. We have your back. There is still a mission to accomplish in and out of the uniform, and we're here for you.
Mia, thank you so much for being here. And audience, thank you so much again for joining us here on the Next Gen Warrior Show. We will be back next Monday. As always, continue to lead and continue to serve in your communities after you take off the uniform. We'll see you next week.
Follow us on Instagram at Voices of Vets, on Twitter at Voice of Veterans, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Voices of Veterans. To hear more, please visit voicesofveterans.org. Join us in sharing the success stories of Texas veterans. Thank you for joining us for the Next Gen Warrior podcast.